Hi, everyone. Today I'm here with Emily Esposito. She started off her basketball career at Villanova and transferred to Boston University to finish her basketball career. She's the founder and CEO of a company called Em-Powerment. She works with former athletes, current athletes, does basketball training, mentorship, works to sort of empower the next generation of athletes. I think it's really inspiring that she's used her platform to do this. So I'm really excited to have her here today. Hi, Emily.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, but also thank you for having me on. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be talking to you today. So how I just wanted to start off by asking you a little bit about, your collegiate career and, how that sort of has influenced your career path up to now.
Yeah, I think, it's so interesting athletics being, right? We think of just like college athletics, but from the time we were young, right? We were playing one sport, this particular sport or athletics in general, and it gives you routine and structure. And there are so many like life lessons found within it because you look at life, right? And it's a sport too. You're competing for things, you're trying to win certain things, you're becoming a leader. And I would really say that my college career set me up well because it forced me into so many uncomfortable positions that like I had to become a leader even if I wasn't comfortable with it. Or like I'm such an empath that like learning to really support my teammates in what best way I could support them. So you figure out all these different things that I think a lot of people miss until they start getting into the real world. And I wish that I had listened to all those people who came in and talked to us and were like, listen, like you guys don't understand. You like, yeah, teamwork is second nature to you guys, but when you go into like corporate America, it's not second nature to everyone. And we're like, yeah, okay, to a certain extent, like everyone gets teamwork. And it's like, no, some people have literally never like been part of a team in their life. And I wish I really took those things to heart because I thought they were just saying it to say it and make us feel good about what we were doing. But there is so much truth to it, right? There's so many things that you can carry from athletics at any level into life. While at the same time, I will be someone who says there are also a lot of things you have to unlearn in order to continue to be your best self. But I think, at the end of the day, if you can learn to take everything in stride, the good, the bad, indifferent, um, I mean, it's going to be something that propels you forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think like it is really crazy, like you said. Like I talked to someone else too about like mentors that they've had in college, and they said like when they were in the moment, like they didn't even really see them as mentors. You kind of hear what they say and it kind of,
Hmm.
you listen, but like you're not like, oh yeah, like they were a mentor to me in college. And then once you move on, you're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize the impact that that had on my life, or I didn't realize like
Yeah.
the impact that had on me in that moment. But the same thing for the skills that you learn like through college athletics, like teamwork and like simple things like that. Like you don't realize until you get into the workplace that like so many people don't. That's not second nature for a ton of people, which is
Yeah.
crazy to
Yeah.
believe as someone who's always been around that.
Yep.
How did you, I know you're still like involved in basketball and in sports like in some way, but when your
Mhm.
career ended, how did you go about sort of like, finding your own identity post college athletics and sort of adjusting to that life?
I I always say like for me, I think my path was so like interesting and unique based on like I went to Villanova, right? I redshirted my freshman year, so I didn't play. I learned the offense. I played my sophomore year, or redshirt freshman year. I was starting by the end of my season or by the end of the season there. I ended up transferring. I transferred when there was still a rule you transfer D1 to D1, you have to sit out a year. Applied for a waiver, didn't get it. Appealed, didn't get it. So then I was sitting out again. So, and then we had COVID.
Yeah.
And then it was like I had gone to Boston because I love the coach there. She was at UConn for 9 years. I knew she was going to implement all these things. And when I was transferring, I was saying to coaches, I go, I want to become a better person, a better leader, and a better player, and in that order. And when I said that to her, she was one of the only coaches who said, I can help you do that. Like she said it with like such conviction that I'm like, okay, like it's almost not right if I pick a different place.
Yeah.
Um, but I say all that to say, like, it was it's so interesting how things had happened, that it like it wasn't ever perfect and it wasn't ever what I wanted. And I think the burnout was slowly happening consistently. So when I had transferred, right, I wasn't playing in COVID, and then we got a coach. I had 3 coaches in 5 years. And the last coach, I didn't like how she treated people, and that's really hard for me. And I'm someone who, like, I know my standards, I know my morals, my values, and if I don't stand with that, then I'm gonna act on them. And so I had quit with a month left in the season. And so many people, even my dad was like, it's not like we would text a lot, but he was one of the, like, you finish everything you start, da 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 da, all this and that. And I'm like, I absolutely hear that. But like what people didn't understand is, one, they weren't seeing the behind the scenes. Two, I really felt like the best version of myself was on the other side of my playing days. And so for me, it just felt like transferring from a higher level school like Villanova to Boston, I already was forced to navigate like who I was, because right, you weren't just known as a basketball player. In fact, like our coaches were now making sure you were going to class and making sure you were figuring all your stuff out, and you were like dressing like you didn't just roll out of bed, all these sorts of things. Like she had all these rules. And then um when I ended up quitting, it was like I was so burnt out at that point that it didn't feel like a harsh transition, right? It like just felt like this slow evolution of me losing love for the game, and knowing that there was much more to me besides me like putting a ball through a hoop. Um, so I think, as much as I'm frustrated or was frustrated with my experience, at the same time I'm like, okay, there was a lot of grace in it, because I know how hard it could have been if I had this great career and I go and I leave like my favorite coach and now I'm just done playing. Like I know how hard that would have been. Um, so I think that's where I'm a little bit different than some people, is I lost so much love for the game, and there was not really a constant throughout my career, um, that it was almost like it happened how it was supposed to. And then I went into being a GA at Arizona. Um, and again, it's like, yeah, you're still in that realm, but it's like, okay, I think there's a much better way to go about this. Maybe it's not coaching, maybe it's more so mindset training with younger kids.
Yeah, I think like even if you don't have like a sort of up and down college experience and like your playing experience is sort of considered, normal, I feel like as you go through it and as you get older, you kind of do naturally sort of like find your identity and sort of like find things outside of basketball and realize like it's not the only thing in the world. Like I feel like I sort of
Yeah.
find more balance like in my life as my career sort of went on. Which I think is helpful, but I know a lot of people don't. I know a lot of people
Yeah.
are at high majors for 4 or 5 years and, like, don't have the ability to experience, like, a mid-major school like you were talking about where, like, your coaches emphasize, like, there are things outside of basketball and, like,
Hmm.
you have to go to class, you have to dress like,
Yeah.
not dress a certain way, but, like, like, you're not rolling out of bed, like, you have to look sort of, like, present
Yeah.
like, I went to Canisius was a really relatively small school. It was, like, less than probably 2,000 people that lived on campus. And everyone knows, like, everyone who plays every sport, like, probably half
Hmm.
the student body was an athlete, so it's like, you have to, be your best self, like, in the classroom, in the community,
Hmm.
um, so I feel like that is super helpful in helping find, yourself outside of basketball. Because I know my coaches were really big on that as well.
Yeah.
Can you touch a little bit about, did you have any, like, mentors throughout your college career or, your post-playing career that have sort of helped you, you know, find the career path that you're on right now?
Yeah, I would say more so just not even like sitting down with them and necessarily talking careers, but just getting their advice more so on life and what I'm feeling and what I'm going through, and like the like life confusion that I'm having, right? And I would say Jana Tucker, who I played with at Villanova, she was a senior when I was a redshirt freshman, and like, my God, you could talk about someone who would take you under her wing. She just is like so wise beyond her years, that when even when I was transferring, she's like one of the first people I went to. I'm like, like I want to go here. Like, what do I do? I was so lost. I was also immature. And when I picked Villanova, literally what my mindset was basketball. I didn't like care about academics. It was like, no, I just want to like go to the best basketball school I can go to. Um, but I also, throughout my career, it evolved to having other people like Coach Mo when I was at Boston, like the amount of support she gave me. Yes, she was my coach, but I consider her a mentor. Like she was so much more than a coach in terms of like I really felt like she was family. Like she cared about me as a person before she cared about me as a player. And it's one thing to say that you do that as a coach, and it's another thing to actually do that and to act on that. Um, and I mean, honestly, that whole coaching staff, KB, who I'm still in touch with, she was one of the assistant coaches there. And I think that's why I appreciated them so much, right? Because not every coach is a mentor, right? But most mentors are like coach are more like coaches.
Yeah.
And at Boston, I also like met Dr. Green and our athletic trainer Steph. And I know it seems like, okay, well, these are like all your support staff. But like I don't think people understand as as frustrated as I was in the moment, I walked into an elite group of people, regardless of like the level of play. I was around like high caliber people, one in their profession, but two in just who they were. And I think, I was like down pretty bad in terms of I wasn't in the best headspace. It was like the first time I was really struggling. I didn't know, right? Like that was the point. That was probably my harshest transition point of like Emily the athlete to Emily the person. And they were all there for that. Like I remember like I didn't get my waiver, I applied for it, and I'm like having all these other things going on, right? Like I struggled with learning disabilities, I have ADHD, I'm struggling with all these things, and I'm in Coach Mo's office like crying on her shoulder. And like but she was so good about it, right? Like she never made me feel bad for that. And so I would say like those are all my mentors that I could go for, that I could get advice or I could just vent, right? But I think it's so key now being at the position I am in life to have mentors. One, like, yes, to support you, yes, to give you advice, but like I think we forget like to hold you accountable and to like hold a mirror up to yourself, right? Um, and if you're willing to do the work, like a mentor is the most incredible thing.
Yeah. Can you talk like has that impacted you and like what you do now in your career? Like how have you utilized that to sort of push yourself forward into, your own sort of platform and help others?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I said this the other day. I was like, I have seen what great coaches can do, and I have seen what not so great coaches can do. And the immense impact that they have, right? Like impact isn't always good, right? Like sometimes it's a terrible impact that you have on someone. And I was like, okay, I want to avoid that at all costs, but I also want to help others. And I have this struggle and this pain that I've gone through that I don't want others to experience. And I also know that you have to give your pain purpose for it to be worth it. So I'm like, okay, how can I kind of bundle that all into one? And how can I become a little bit more like Coach Mo, a little bit more like KB, a little bit more like all these coaches and mentors that I've had, a little bit more like Dr. Green, right? Or even these people I've had in high school. Um, so I would say that's like probably one of the biggest things.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you do now and how, you aim to like help athletes right now?
Yeah. So one of my biggest things, and I'm still working on like some modules to create and work booklets, but more so for current athletes and specifically ones who are in college, it's the mindset piece, right? Like my biggest fear and what I had gone through is going on autopilot. Like I don't think people understand the severity of that when you wake up every day and it feels like Groundhog Day. And like I got to the point multiple times throughout my career where I really just felt like I was going through the motions. And it's like I look back now because I feel like I live with so much more purpose and like just inspiration that I'm like that was like I feel so bad for myself back then because I'm like right? There's so many great things still that are happening to you, but you can only see this one thing. And the other part of that autopilot thing is, as an athlete, you're often told where to be, when to be there, how to dress, right? How to show up. We're bred to say PC answers. So we lose so much of ourselves because everything is curated for us, right? I remember at Villanova, I didn't really pick many of my classes. They'd suggest some, and I'd be like, oh, I prefer this over this. But they laid everything out. And I didn't, when I got to BU, I didn't know how to select my own classes because I never had to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like so many things like that um are almost like stripped from you, and so you have to be extremely intentional about remembering who you are. And which the first part of that is knowing who you are, but like remembering who you are and being able to like take time within your day or your week and reflect and process the things you're going through. But again, as an athlete, everything is happening so quickly. We don't, right? For us to sit down and like give ourselves time, I don't think we have enough like one-on-one time with ourselves. So that's more of my, like what I do, some like life coaching and mindset training with those athletes. And then with younger athletes, I'll do like one-on-one trainings too. But the first part kind of what I was talking about is like I want them to figure out who they are before they're told who to be, right? Like you get into this world between social media and then what your team wants you to be and what your coaches are pushing on you. I get you're about to become part of a program and a culture and a team, and you have to buy into that. And I just said this the other day, and now I'm happy because I looked it up last night to make sure I got the quote right. But um, one of the Dobo who's at West Virginia, I worked with her previously, and she's been with Coach Kellogg, who's now the head coach there, and they had a great year. And one of his best slogans is like, be you, but align with us. And I'm like, that is so huge, right? Like going in, that's what I want for these kids to completely understand. Like you can still be you, know your standards, like have your morals, like figure out what those are. That's the first part. And then the second part is acting accordingly. That doesn't mean that you disregard everything your coach says or whatever, but right, like there is something to be said, like know what you stand for. um so a long-winded answer of, I think there are so many things that have kind of led me to what I do now, but it's more so giving back the tools that I wish I had.
Yeah, I think, like, especially as a freshman, like, coming right out of college, like you said, it's easy to just kind of go into autopilot mode and just let
Hmm.
the days sort of pass you by, like, I don't know, I feel like I sort of didn't really start to find things outside of basketball, honestly, until my junior and senior year, and I think
Yeah.
that has been so helpful for me when I'm even talking to, friends or, like, family friends that are beginning their college athletic journey right now. Like,
Mm.
some of my biggest advice to them is to sort of, like, immerse yourself in other things, like, on campus, or find, like, other things that you enjoy outside of basketball, because, like, when the season gets tough and when things aren't going well, like,
Mhm.
and you realize all you have is basketball, like, you're kind of in, like, a really terrible space, like, mentally.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like
such a great
something,
point.
um, since transferring to Canisius, like, something that really helped me is, I was sort of involved with SAC, and I had like some leadership positions within the athletic department. And I feel like that sort of helped me meet other people in other sports who maybe have like different experiences from me. And I feel like that was super helpful throughout like the
Yeah.
college career.
No, that's huge.
My last question for you is just, do you have any specific advice for people in my position, or sort of in any sort of period of transition, in their life right now coming out of college athletics?
Man, I would say give yourself grace. Like understand, right? Like even this past year, it's like I still don't have it all figured out. And I think as athletes, right, we are not patient with ourselves. Um, but one of the biggest pieces, yeah, give yourself grace and understand it's going to be like incremental bits of like success, or incremental things of like finding yourself or figuring out what you like and what you don't like. And they're both equally as important. And then I think the only other thing I would say is, um, we think about confidence, right? Like I always want people that like part of empowering others and like empowerment in general is like giving people this confidence or instilling confidence in themselves. And so many people are like, okay, well, like, how do you become more confident? It's like, okay, well, you think about it, right? Like, when you go into the gym and there's repetition and you're practicing, you're usually going to get better and you're going to gain more confidence. You gain confidence from preparation, right? And then I was thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, and that's why I think so many people lack confidence when we leave sports and when we leave athletics and when we have a transition period in our life, is because we haven't practiced being who we are enough, right? Like, we almost don't know who we are. We don't, there are so many people. I was on a podcast a couple months ago, and this guy and I were talking, and he goes, yeah, I was asking this girl just, rapid fire questions at the end. And I was like, oh, what your favorite, simple things, favorite color, what's your favorite ice cream? Or would you go with this or that? And she couldn't think of her own, but she knew her best friends. And that is just a testament to right? It's so much easier to witness than it is to work, right? Like, working is holding up the mirror. Witnessing is like scrolling on social media, like, oh, I like this about this person, or like, oh, I'd like to be like that person, right? And I would say, be willing to spend time with yourself, and it's not always going to be the most fun thing, but I promise the work is worth it. And if you can just practice being your like more of your true self every single day, honestly, that sets you up for life. In the next transition will be even easier, and then the following transition, like, it's almost gonna become this process that's seamless.
Yeah. This was awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on here. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I hope some of that helps. But yeah, thank you for having me on.